When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Skims or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/income.
Hi everyone, I'm Deb Flashenberg. Welcome to Yoga, Birth, Babies, a podcast produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. We will be diving into everything prenatal yoga, birth, and baby related, hoping to inspire, educate, and empower you through your journey into motherhood. Thank you for listening. Hi, I'm Deb Flashenberg. I'm the host of Yoga Birth Babies. And today we're talking about birth preparation, not just about what to do physically. We're looking at how expectations are formed, how they influence decision-making, and how to stay grounded when birth doesn't follow a plan. To have this conversation, I have Robin Gibson Douthit. She teaches our childbirth education classes at PYC. And when I thought I would love to talk to someone incredibly knowledgeable that can help break down expectations versus what can happen realistically and how to bridge that gap, I thought of Robin. Let me tell you a little bit about her. So Robin is a doula, a Lamaze childbirth educator, a lactation counselor, and has been in practice for over 20 years. She's passionate about sharing the good news about pregnancy and childbirth and includes conversations about the importance of advocacy for pregnant people. She is the founder of Flourishing Birth, where she offers childbirth education and doula support, and is also the program director of NYC Lamaze Educator Training Program, where she's busy training the next generation of Lamaze childbirth educators. And for the past 6 years, Robin has been serving on the board of directors of Lamaze International. And she teaches all around New York City in the busy hospital systems. So I loved talking to Robin. She gave such grounded information, and having been doing doula work for so long and as a childbirth educator, she really was able to speak from an evidence-based place. And one of the main takeaways I would say from this conversation is the more information you can get, the more evidence-based information you can get, the more support and conversations you can have. That can help dispel some of these ideas that might lead you to disappointment, learning how to set expectations that are then met with the realities of birth and being flexible when things do change. I loved this conversation, and I'm incredibly excited for you to hear it. Now, before we get to my talk with Robin, I always love to give updates about what's happening at Prenatal Yoga Center. I'd say the best thing to do is head to our website. You can check out our schedule for in-person classes, our online classes, our on-demand classes, our workshops, our teacher trainings. I even have free videos, free yoga videos on our website. So head there, sign up for our newsletter, stay in the loop. I also want to take a moment to thank you, our listener, because we get applications almost every day for ideas or for people to be on the podcast. And that's exciting. I love to know who you want me to speak with and some ideas of podcast topics that you want me to cover. So thank you for honestly helping me make this job a little bit easier. So thank you for that. I do have a request from you. Please leave a rating and review wherever you're listening to this from, because it helps people find us. The podcast is to support the community, and the more people that we can have listen, the more support we can offer. So please take that extra moment and help us out. All right, that is enough from me. We're going to take a break. When we come back, please enjoy my conversation with Robin.
This episode is brought to you by Nordstrom. Whether you're packing for a vacation or dressing for a wedding, Nordstrom has head-to-toe looks for wherever summer takes you. From swimwear and bold color to romantic florals and dresses that make an entrance, find the right style for every unforgettable moment. Shop new arrivals from brands you love like Farm Rio, Free People, Vince, Wave, and Stod. Plus free shipping and returns and styling help whenever you need it make it all so easy. Shop now in stores at Nordstrom.com or download the Nordstrom app.
Hi, Robin. How are you?
I'm well, Deb. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I am so excited. Not only do I get to pick your brain, but you have so much knowledge. And I know you're now teaching the classes at the childbirth ed classes at PYC. And so I'm just so excited to sit down and just talk with you because you are so knowledgeable. But before I throw a million questions at you, why don't we start with just sharing a little bit about yourself and what led you to birth work?
Sure, absolutely. Let's see. I wear many hats. I am a Lamaze certified childbirth educator. I'm a doula. I am a certified lactation counselor, and the other part of that was what led me into birth work. Oh my goodness. I think it was my own births actually that inspired me to want to help others. They were both very different in their own way. And then, of course, it was also, I was invited to support a friend who was pregnant, and I was in early postpartum with my second baby and said, sure, why not? And thought, well, I did it twice, so I can definitely help someone support them in their experience, and learned it was a completely different perspective. And I had no idea what I was doing. And that's what inspired me to move forward. And I remember asking a childbirth educator, sitting in on my friend's classes with her, what do you do with this? Like, how can I learn? How do I do what you're doing? And she said, oh, you want to be a childbirth educator or a doula? And then it sort of took off from there.
I mean, you're also being modest. You just finished I'm calling it your reign as president. It's like it was your kingdom, as the Lamaze president. I mean, you got some knowledge behind you. So this is exciting. And
I thank you. It was an experience. And I think every part of the work I do when I do birth work is definitely an experience. And I learned so much from each opportunity. So, yeah.
And let's dig into that. So today we're going to talk about how expectations shape birth and what happens when reality doesn't always match that. And the reason I wanted to talk to you about this is because I've had students come back after, and some felt really great about, they prepped, they had a lot of different ideas about what birth could be like, and they felt really satisfied. And then I've had some that had very specific ideas and often felt disappointed. So I thought, wow, we need to talk about expectations. And I'll be honest, I had that for my first. I really thought my first birth was going to go in a very different way. I was already a doula for over 9 years at that time. I had been teaching childbirth education. I was a prenatal yoga teacher. I talked to my mom about her births, and I had this expectation for myself. And I had this team that I thought was going to help me see that through. And when things really went a very different direction, it was shocking. And I realized if that happened to me, it happens to a lot of people. So I wanted to unpack this. And I think you're a great person for that. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's a big, it's an important topic for me. I feel like it happens more often than people think. And there's so much that I've learned, and I know there's so much that you've learned just in the work that you do, and then from your own birthing experiences, that we'll never get to the tip of the iceberg. It's so deep and vast and wide, and expectations are a big part of that and part of the preparation. So it's something that I do talk about quite a bit.
Great. So let's jump in with when you think about birth preparation, where do you see the biggest disconnect between what people expect and what actually happens?
That is a really good question. I honestly, I see disconnection everywhere. And I even recognize it in myself when I'm going to a doctor's visit. And I know that things are sort of tilting to one side, and I may not, for whatever reason, be doing anything about that to correct that imbalance. But I see it between pregnant people and their expectations, and then they meet hospital policy.
Mm.
I see it between, and I don't know how many people are aware of this, but I also see a lot of it occurring, not just between. I guess the obvious is the pregnant person and their caregiver, but I also see disconnect happening quite a bit with the pregnant person and their number one support person, whether it be husband, partner, wife, mother, sister. I and that's the thing that I noticed, like in the past few years, that really needed some attention. That if
Can you
partners
unpack
are,
that more? That's
yeah,
really interesting. Can you unpack that a little more, like what you're seeing and where specifically with the support person, what's happening?
sure, yeah. I see it in a lot of different ways. I'll give a couple of examples. A person who brings a family member who will be their number one support, a mom or a sister or a cousin, and that person comes with their own stuff, their own
Mm-hmm.
experiences, and you can see how that's going to weigh heavily on the person that they're supposed to be supporting. There's a lot of when I get that kind of personality in my class, there's a lot of historical information. I remember back when I gave birth.
Mm.
Yeah. And so
It's almost like they haven't processed their own or they're reprocessing it while the other person's birthing.
exactly. And that's a normal thing to do. It's an absolute normal thing to do. I just concern myself with, I get concerned about how helpful that will be. So I'm always glad they're there. I give lots of information, and I hope and pray that the class has somehow had an effect, and they're learning how to support and how to be more in tune with the other person. And then the other one that's pretty common is a person walking into a birth experience having expectations that they haven't even discussed with their caregiver. Like they've got these plans and or preferences, and they're, whether it's because they've had no time because their prenatal visits are short or whatever, there's this level of expectation that when it's not met, when they walk into that hospital setting, because there's so many policies, and hospitals, of course, we know have their way of doing things, there's this huge disappointment because of that disconnect.
That makes a lot of sense. So I'm kind of jumping all over the place. My brain is taking all the stuff you're saying in.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go with the provider one.
Mm-hmm.
The person may have this idea in mind. They haven't had a chance to speak with their provider. How can we close that gap?
I think it's never too late to. I don't think it's so there's disconnection, and what we're needing, or what someone in that instance is needing, is connection. And there's always, always, always space and room for connection, even if it's in the moment, to slow things down, to stop, to say, whoa, wait a minute. I'm not understanding what's happening, or I'm not fully on board with what's happening. Can I have some more information? The thing to know about that is that in most instances, whatever is going on, usually there's time, whether it's a few minutes or a few hours. It's important. There's always room to connect and to say, hey, I need more. I'm not getting enough. I feel like things are happening around me and I'm not sure why. And I call it the conveyor belt experience, where you just kind of hop on and it's like, what? And things are going on and there's this overwhelm. And doctors know what they're doing. Doctors are great. Midwives are great. But it's important for the person who's doing the heavy lifting, which is the person who's going to be birthing the human being, to be connected with them in so many ways, so that the experience is it's uplifted, I think, when that happens.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, like the conveyor belt, where they don't feel like they're being dragged along. And I know I've talked about this in the podcast in the past, but I know I've come across studies that have shown when people are part of the decision making, even if it's not the decision they had originally thought they'd be making, if they're part of that decision making, they tend to come out of the birth experience with less trauma and more satisfaction. So it feels like that's what you're saying, is like, even if it's a moment, getting that connection and getting that conversation, as opposed to just kind of slapping the forward moving whatever intervention on and not having the birthing person involved.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes a difference. I don't, sometimes I think I keep saying the same thing over and over again in my classes when I talk about this, but I also preface by saying I can never say this too much. I think it's so important that if, when red flags go up, if there is concern, if there is disconnection emotionally, physically, whatever, to slow it down and get what you need. It's going to make a difference, just like you mentioned.
Where do you think some of the expectations of birth come from? I remember doing a workshop, as a birthing from within workshop. And I just finished reading that book, which I actually happen to love. And oh gosh, why am I blanking on her name? Pam England was talking about when she would walk into a birth, if it was very romanticized, she's like, oh, we're in for a bit. Where do you feel some of these expectations come from about birth? Because I'm not sure if it's social media. I don't know if it's friends or family, but they can also often lead to disappointment. What are your thoughts?
I yes to all of that and all of those sources. I think whether people are imagining what they'd like in their heads, and that's easier to do when you don't really have much else to fall back on in terms of support informationally. Like when you don't know your options and your choices, you're gonna, what else do you have? And so I think when people are looking at social media, if you have like influencers who are pregnant, and what are they buying? What are they doing? Where are they, where are they going? Where are they getting their information? What are their recommendations? And the tendency is, because they have hundreds of thousands of followers or millions of followers, that they're called influencers for a reason. And I think that I've heard a lot of people have come into my classes and have shared influencer information and wanted to know if it was accurate or true. And then so we get into the evidence-based parts of whatever they're talking about. But yeah, social media and personal experience, familial experience as well, hearing other people's birth stories. And I'm laughing because I remember all the things I was told by family members who had given birth. And I was terrified because of that. Like, it was not supportive in any way, with the exception, I remember my mom saying, I did it, you can do it. And I sort of held on to that, but not much else was coming. And it seemed pretty terrifying to me. And so, yeah, I think a lot of the influence comes from a big part social media, and then family, friends, trusted friends, maybe someone who's been through it and had a really great, just really quickly to tell a really short story.
Please.
I had a birth client who was really leaning towards wanting a cesarean instead of vaginal birth. And she hadn't taken a childbirth class. And it was in my early days of doula work. And I we had a really big conversation about that. But the reason she was leaning, and she's like, maybe I'll just ask for an elective cesarean, is because her sister had just given birth a few months before and had a really positive cesarean birth experience. I'm not sure of the reasons behind her sister's cesarean, whether or not there were indications, but yeah, she was like really leaning towards that, and almost had one. And at the end of it, when we were talking during a postpartum visit, she realized that both her experience and her sister's experience were very different and should not have been compared. But it's really easy to do that when you've got family. And so I think those are all that to say that the strongest influencers are social media influencers, and I think family.
And it's interesting that those are really strong influencers. And the research I have done, and I haven't done it in the last couple of years, I don't think the statistics have changed. Actually, as the former Lamaze president, you probably know this, but people taking childbirth ed classes, which hopefully they're like, I know ours are, but hopefully all the ones out there are evidence-based, are actually declining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
No, please keep going, because I'm thinking if they're declining and these are the evidence-based pieces that might be giving people or helping them shape, let's say, multiple expectations, so like multiple birth plans in a sense. Right. Yeah. Without that, we're left with family and social media So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I am not surprised that people are taking, the number of people taking childbirth classes has declined. I think it was kind of like 49% were and 51 were not. It was almost half and half for first-time pregnant people. But I'm not surprised by that because of social media. One of the things I learned, and I have learned during my time serving on the board of directors, is we really dug into the social media part of getting Lamaze information out to the masses. And so how was that going to happen? And so social media experts that we hired were telling us, you have to, you 2 or 3 times a week come out with a fact, an evidence-based fact, because that's where you're going to get the biggest draw from people who are searching for evidence-based information. They're not going to go to Cochrane Library. They're not going to go to the Journal of Perinatal Education. They don't know about those sources. They're going to go to Insta. They're going to go to Facebook. They're going to go to, I don't know what the latest are. I feel like I'm aging myself at this point, but
TikTok and all that stuff.
TikTok, yeah. They're going to go to those sources looking. And then, of course, that once you find one thing and you're scrolling and stopping, you get more and more. And that information is, unfortunately, not going to be the best information.
So I guess it's about being kind of discerning about what you're taking in. But I love that you guys did think, all right, if we want to get this evidence-based information out, meet the people where they are. Mm. And I love that. Okay, we're going to take a break. When we come back, let's continue with the idea of birth culture and informed decision-making, because I think those are important. All right, we'll be right back.
Hi, Diva. It's Rachel.
And Jordan. Yeah, hi. Quick question.
Why are you not spending your Venmo balance?
Yeah, we're concerned.
You can, buy stuff with it.
Ugh, you love buying stuff.
And earn cash back on eligible purchases.
You love purchasing eligible things.
So the money your friend sent you yesterday, that's today's ramen or rideshare or eye patches.
The skincare kind, not the pyro kind.
Spend with Venmo, and you can earn cash back with Venmo Stash. Venmo Stash bundle terms and exclusions apply. Max $100 cash back per month. See terms at venmo.me/stash terms. ID verification required to use a Venmo balance.
Plan B is a backup birth control option that's there for you when things don't go according to plan. It specifically works after unprotected sex and before pregnancy occurs by temporarily delaying ovulation. Plan B is available nationwide at all major retailers and through delivery apps like DoorDash. No ID, prescription, or age requirement. It's the #1 OBGYN recommended brand of emergency contraception, and it won't impact your future fertility. That's freedom to be. Use as directed.
Okay, we are back. So, do you think the current birth culture supports informed decision-making, or does it subtly discourage it?
Ooh,
and it's a big question.
Yeah. Good one. You know what? I think there are two birth cultures to consider. The hospital birth culture and then the home birth center culture, and that split happens with, for the most part, hospital birth being um, uh, taken care of by obstetricians, and home and birth center births mainly by midwives. And so because you have those two separate cultures, one is going to, I feel, be more um, supportive of informed decision making, and one maybe not so much. And I think you can guess which is which. When you are going to a midwifery visit, it's a very different experience than you visiting prenatally. A doctor, an obstetrician who practices within a hospital or has hospital privileges. It's timed in terms of minutes. You feel like you're holding on to their coattails. You're not getting a lot of information, but you're trusting or doing your best to trust them because they hold all of the information. And I think as gatekeepers, they're not sharing as much as people would like, but then it's the pregnant person's responsibility to ask for that. But getting to midwifery, the culture or the practice of midwifery, it's very different in that it's all about the whole person. It's all about who they are, how they live, what they eat, what they do, what their thoughts are, what their an hour and a half for a visit says a lot about how much decision-making ability or freedom you're going to have, or collaboration, I guess is the better word, you're going to have in that birthing experience. So, yeah, I think I don't know, does hospital birth culture subtly discourage informed decision making? I think just by the systems that are set up within the hospitals, it can, and it does. I've seen it. I know you've seen it too. It just it happens just because it's a system. You're walking in. I always say you're walking into a unit where they have a limited number of rooms to take care of patients. And that alone, along with some other components, are going to determine how birth flows. That's just the culture of birth. Whereas a home birth is more centered on the person and their environment and what they're wanting. And there's a lot of listening and learning back and forth that's going on in that experience that I think there's not a lot of time for that with hospital birth. So I think just because the cultures are different, it was kind of important to separate them and talk about them separately.
No, I appreciate that. And this kind of brings me up to two questions. Or one I'm thinking is, in terms of a hospital birth, since we're talking about expectations, I think kind of setting the expectation of how much you're actually seeing your care provider. This was something when I started my doula work, I was a little surprised by it. It's that you don't typically see the care provider a ton.
Right.
Now, when the very first birth I attended as a doula, and you're around my age, I think, so you might remember Sylvie Blaustein, the midwife. She was attending, I know, I love Sylvie. She was attending the very first birth. And so she set the bar high, and she's a midwife. So she actually was sitting in a rocking chair in the corner knitting for a good part of the time. Wow. It was a full-on induction. And I'm like, oh, that's great. I love that. Especially because it was my first birth as a doula. So I'm like, I'm so glad I'm not figuring this out myself. Like, she was very guiding. And then the next one was a more traditional, and I'm not poo-pooing either. It was just what I learned kind of on the spot, is that the next one with a more traditional OB, they weren't in very often. They often did a check and then really was there for the pushing. And so I was surprised. And if we're talking about understanding expectations in reality, they're not there. So we kind of fall back to what you said about informed decision making and the hospital setting is due to the protocols and routine interventions in a hospital, you often probably are seeing less informed decision making or support for that because of how it's set up and who's actually there more. So that was something that was interesting. And then I guess my follow-up, sorry, I'm talking for a long time on this one, is when we're talking about, informed decision making, how can someone tell the difference between being guided by their care team or possibly being pressured into a decision? Because they may not even realize it could be subtle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. You feel it. You can feel the pressure. You can feel the change in temperature. I see it more often in with doula clients I've had whose caregivers told them earlier in their pregnancies, oh, yeah, no, absolutely. We'll only do induction if it's medically necessary. And you're doing fine. There's no need to even look in that direction. Or, second pregnancy, second labor coming up. First labor was cesarean, ended in cesarean. Oh, we absolutely support VBAC, which is vaginal birth after cesarean. And we actually even encourage it. And then when labor begins, there's a completely different change. There are different people in the room because it's, as you said, the people who you think would be there waiting for you. And that's one of the questions I always tell people. When you make that phone call to your caregiver to say, labor is starting, but, I'm just giving you a heads up, and the decision is made mutually for you to come in. The first question to ask is, are you there? Because everybody sort of thinks, well, I'm talking to you on the phone, so when I get there, you're going to be there waiting for me. And then they're not. And there's this other person, maybe a hospitalist who they've never met before. And then it's like, oh, wait, who's this person? And so, yeah, getting used to them, getting used to the hospital, getting used to the unfamiliarity. And then if that person doesn't understand what your preferences are because they've had no time to get to know you and to get to know your birth preferences. If they're pushing their preferences, that feels incredibly. That's a huge shift, and it's a disappointing shift. And I think it's at that point where a lot of people feel that that red flag go up, instincts hopefully start to kick in, and there needs to be, I was going to say a reintroduction, but not so because they've never been introduced. So sort of a slowing down of things. And I've seen, as a doula, I've done that, and I've seen partners do that in such a beautiful way that it's almost like a brief little hiccup, and then everybody's on board in terms of the care team.
Can you give an example of when you've seen that, we haven't really met, we don't know each other, we don't know you don't know how I'm hoping to birth. How is that usually, have you seen that handled in the spot in the birth room, especially to try to make sure we're on the same page and there's informed consent and we're all really trying to rally together?
Yeah, I've seen some really beautiful, I'll give one example of someone who was told that pain medication would be given when they prefer. And they we got to the hospital. They weren't sure what they wanted. They weren't sure if they wanted like an analgesic or if they wanted to be completely numb. And they asked for the anesthesiologist to come in, and it was sort of the support team, labor and delivery nurse, was like, oh, well, they offer this, like trying to get her to decide then so that they could go to the anesthesiologist and say, okay, this is what she wants, sort of like doing some kind of intercessory. I don't know if it was prevention or I have no idea. Anyway, they said, no, thank you. We prefer to speak to the anesthesiologist. The anesthesiologist came in. They introduced themselves. Partner was very involved in asking questions. And I saw it makes such a difference in how, everybody was everybody was buddy buddy. And in a hospital where I think, in most hospitals, when an epidural is given, usually the extra people in the room, and they consider, unfortunately, doulas to be extra people, they're asked to leave.
Mm-hmm.
I was invited to come to the back where he was while he was administering the epidural and explaining. I learned so much. And so that kind of difference, and when someone is being pressured to, oh, we don't really need that, or you can just tell me, or you don't need to get the doctor in right now, or the doctor's not here right now. Having that extra, I don't know if you call it extra support, but having that person who will stand in the gap and say, well, no, even if it's you or you and someone else, it
Mm-hmm.
makes such a difference. And it really helps to guide the care team actually away from any kind of expectation that they're going to manage completely everything that's happening. That conveyor belt experience that I was talking about. That's where they slow down and say, oh, wow, okay. I think we need to slow down and listen a little bit more and hear what this patient is wanting, because they're clearly needing some more time. And
I like that the partner really helped do that, helped set the stage for that. You're like kindly saying, thank you, nurse person, for offering that. We'd prefer, so I think that really helps, having kind of some, I don't want to say boundaries, but clear acknowledgement they wanted to help, but that they felt speaking to the doctor is going to be a better option, so they can really feel like they're making informed decisions.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about that relationship between the care provider and, I think, even setting the stage for expectations throughout pregnancy. So how do you think the care provider can shape those expectations throughout pregnancy? And then also kind of throwing in, what are some early signs that maybe this is not the best collaborative care?
Ooh, I love those. I think, relationships with our care providers are supposed to be a partnership, right? It's supposed to be both you, the patient, me, the patient, and my doctor or midwife working together towards the same end. And that's not necessarily just, we both, the baby and the patient makes it out alive. It should, I always tell my childbirth class attendees to have lofty expectations, and to have lofty expectations of your caregivers, because they're the ones who are walking you through and supporting you physically in every way, physically, emotionally, through, or should be rather, with the emotional part component. But yeah, that relationship between caregivers and patients, it needs to be respected. It needs to be equal footing. There needs to be equal footing, and the patient's expectations need to be understood, not just how the doctor or midwife will practice. And I think being understood and being heard and honored as often as possible, really, it shifts things. And what you notice, some of the signs that there is collaboration going on, is there's peace.
Mm-hmm.
There's no, I remember walking out of a doctor's appointment with a doctor that I knew fully heard me. And I was elated. And it was such a new experience for me. I even thanked her at the end of it. I said, thank you for hearing me. Like that, I have not had that happen in years. And so there's peace. And it's not stressful. I think that adds to the stress. And I think that's what we see when we teach classes, whether it be yoga, prenatal yoga, or childbirth, newborn. I think it comes out in some way where you can hear, and when you're doing introductions, I can hear the stress. I can hear I'm really nervous and I'm really anxious about labor and birth and how it's going to play out. I'm really anxious about, this baby and how I'm going to take care of it after the baby is born. And I think all of that comes from feeling not supported, not getting what they need up to that point. And then it becomes, I think, our jobs as the educators to make sure that they're getting what they need, that the collaboration is happening. So, which means upping the communication, which means teaching more about advocacy. And then when that's done, I've heard and experienced myself that what I feel in that kind of care model is peace and appreciation. And then you begin to almost like, I can't wait to to have this baby because I have such a great team and we're all going to be working together towards this really positive.
I've also found acknowledging the anxiety instead of deflecting it. I've heard people say like, oh, no reason to be anxious. I'll take care of everything.
Yeah.
But that's not really acknowledging, okay, you say you're going to take care of everything, but it's still a big mountain to climb.
Yeah.
So one thing that we try to do is acknowledge, like, of course there's anxiety. You can prepare and have trust, but you still don't know how it's going to unfold. But hopefully some of that anxiety can be held by the people that they're trusting.
Yes.
But acknowledging that anxiety, which kind of brings me to one of my last questions about how to prepare. So how can someone prepare for birth in a way that allows them to stay flexible without feeling unprepared or overwhelmed? What are your thoughts?
That I think that one string on my guitar that I keep plucking at is get as much information as you can about pregnancy, labor, and postpartum experience, healing. Have a plan. Know what you'd prefer. People plan preferences. Which word should I use? Use the word that's more comfortable for you. Let's not just get ridiculous over semantics of what one means over the other. Know what you want, because then you'll be able to know what to ask for. And so you gather that information by taking really good, high quality, evidence-based childbirth prep classes, asking questions, writing them down when they come to mind, and then asking them at prenatal visits. So it's not like a big pile up, like, I forgot to ask these questions, so now I've got like 99 and we've only got 3 minutes left. But making that part of the prenatal experience, to ask all of the questions that you have, to lean in on asking I call one of the biggest questions is, what are my options here? What are my choices? Knowing those in advance, like in a situation, let's say, where it's 28, 29 weeks, 30 weeks, baby is breech. And of course, the conversation is going to be, well, if things don't change, we're going to have to look at different interventions. So knowing then, well, what are my options? What are my choices? What can we do to try to turn this baby downward? What are the possibilities? That goes a long way, and I think helps people to feel prepared and not overwhelmed, because they know what their options and choices are, and they've gotten really good information, and they're able to comfortably communicate with their caregivers. If there's any kind of intimidation going on, like you mentioned earlier, that's going to really be a block in terms of getting what you need. And I always have a strong recommendation for that, which very quickly is switch caregivers, because it can make such a huge difference in your experience and your postpartum healing as well.
I agree. I'm going to throw this out there because I love that you talked about babies breech at 28, 30 weeks, which happens in most babies. I think the percentage is like 97% of babies do go head down, but know your options. One thing that I keep hearing over and over, which is why I did a podcast on this, is someone's at like 32, 34 weeks and they're saying, oh, my care provider is recommending an induction at 39 weeks because I'm over 35. So that sometimes comes out of left field. So having that conversation, kind of maybe the pregnant person can open that up earlier so that it can even say, at the beginning visits, how do you feel about I'm over 35? What are your thoughts on that? So they don't, because when you said switch care providers, I know that's an option for some and not for others, but then knowing what the expectations are from that care provider and then trying to figure out how they can work together. That just popped in my mind. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, switching care providers is extreme. I've seen that happen twice in all the years that I've been doing birth work, and and it was just because it was absolutely necessary. Very close to the estimated due date, and just
that's when it tends to happen. I was hired by someone at 38 weeks, and she switched care providers at 37 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah. And also, I had an experience where I had a client switch care providers while she was pushing.
Oh my God! How? Wait, before we wrap up, tell me how? How did that happen?
Okay, this was amazing. I think about her so often and how she just held to her power. It was something that a lot of people would not have thought was important, but was very important to her. She was in push phase, of course, and as I mentioned, and her care provider walked in, and it was one she was not familiar with. You know, practices are big, and this is one she hadn't met. And she was just kind of directing her in a way towards pushing that was opposite of what my client needed. And so while she was even saying, like, you have to get mad, you have to get angry. And my client wasn't in that space. So she kept shaking her head and it wasn't working. And then finally she whispered to her partner and I can't do this with her in the room. And so the doctor had walked out, and I asked her if she wanted me to go talk to her, and I did. And I just really respectfully and calmly said, she's having a very hard time pushing and has requested another caregiver come and support her during pushing. And the doctor was very accommodating, was apologetic, and someone else came in and her energy was completely different. It was, yes, 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 with every push, and her shaking her head turned to laughter and nodding, and baby came out and into her arms, and it was absolutely amazing. And I learned a lot, actually, from that.
That is amazing. I have to say that is one thing I miss about attending births is how much I learned. I loved being there, not just to support the birthing person, but always something new to come back and report to.
Yes. Yes.
I think that's one reason I love the podcast so much is because I'm like, let me pick your very knowledgeable brain.
Well, you're doing amazing work with this podcast, and it's so much to learn and just listening. And so I'm glad that I was able to be a part.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to take one more break. When we come back, what is one final question what is one final tip or piece of advice you'd like to offer new and expectant parents? So think about that. We'll be right back.
One crunchy bite of a Hershey's cookies and cream bar, and I'm taken right back to college move-in day. I was a little overwhelmed by the newness of it all. Boxes were everywhere. I needed a break from unpacking. But just as I was able to take a breath and open my Hershey's cookies and cream bar, my new roommate Rachel walked in. I offered her a piece, but she said no. Then after a beat, she said, actually, those are my favorite ones. We laughed. The ice was broken, and we've been friends ever since.
Hershey's. It's your happy place.
Okay, so we are back. So what is one final tip or a piece of advice you'd like to offer new and expectant parents?
Oh boy, let's see. I'm going to say just a few really, really quickly.
Okay.
I always advise new and expected parents to talk to each other, not just other people, because no one's going to be living with them except them and the baby. And so to have conversations about support and what that's going to look like. I always encourage them to actually, if they aren't sitting in my class and I know they're pregnant, take a really good class, newborn care class, take a really good prenatal yoga class at the Prenatal Yoga Center, and to just yeah, to stay open and flexible with their preferences. And I think that happens just organically by getting information and taking what you need and tossing the rest or holding it until later. I think it just opens up the more information you have, good communication, choosing caregivers who truly are interested in you and what you're wanting goes a long way, and bringing that out in a doctor maybe a little later than, if it's not possible to change or to find another doctor, then trying to coax that out in with communication and being persistent and what you want and what you need. I think that was more than one, but
That's great. Though I love your information. Where can people find your work?
I think the easiest version of that question I can answer is, where can people find me working? So
Okay, that's true. You kind of work everywhere.
It's been like I've worked in quite a few places. Of course, loving teaching at the Prenatal Yoga Center. I have my private childbirth and newborn care classes that I offer privately to couples through Flourishing Birth. My other passion, I almost forgot about this, is I absolutely love I love training people who want to be childbirth educators, who want to do what I do. And so
I didn't know you trained. Do you train through Lamaze? Is that where?
Yeah. I am a program director for NYC Lamaze. So if anyone is interested in becoming a childbirth educator, they would just have to go to the NYCLamaz.com website. And that's a passion of mine because I'm not going to be around forever. And
I get it.
we need to pass this on to the younger generation, those Gen Zs or Gen Zers or Gen Yer. I don't know what they are now, but yeah, the sooner the better. So
I love that you do that. I did not. I mean, is that a new thing, or were you doing that while you were the president?
It was. I had taken it on in 2023. Before that, I was a trainer with that organization, and then it was passed. I was honored to have it passed to me to take over, and so I've been doing this since 2024. Well, I've been training for years, but
I love that. We do need that. We need solid childbirth educators. I'll make sure that's in our show notes. Robin, it has been so wonderful chatting with you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all you do.
Oh, my pleasure. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for inviting me.
You're so welcome.
This has been an episode of Yoga Birth Babies, produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. You can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope. I'm Deb Flaschenberg. Thanks for listening.
Hello, and welcome to Newbies, the podcast created for new moms navigating the first year of motherhood. Each episode is a safe and supportive space where we talk honestly about postpartum recovery, newborn care, breastfeeding, sleepless nights, mental health, identity shifts, and all the moments nobody fully prepares you for. I'm your host, Kaylee Garcia, and as a new mom myself, I know firsthand how emotional and life-changing the season can be. That's why Newbies is your go-to podcast. It's to bring moms together through real conversations, shared experiences, practical advice, and reassurance that you're not the only one feeling this way. On the show, you'll hear candid stories from fellow moms, expert insights, tips for navigating postpartum life, and conversations about everything. Subscribe to Newbies for new episodes every Thursday. And if you want even more support, join our Patreon, where you can listen to episodes early and ad-free and be a part of our growing community of moms.